Today I'm going to share 5 tips with you to get you off on the right foot if you're new to quilting. Hi, I'm Kim Jamison Hurst of Chatterbox Quilts, and I want to give you some tips to get you started off on the right foot on your quilting journey. So before we get into these though, I just want to mention to you, stick with me to the end of the video because I have a bonus tip for you as well. So let's get started with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to pre-wash your fabrics, or not. Pre-washing your fabric is one of the most controversial topics in quilting, and I will tell you, I don't pre-wash my fabrics unless they are flannel, because flannel shrinks a lot more than typical quilting cottons, or if I think the fabric is going to bleed. So if I have hand dyes or I have dark color batiks, I will pre-wash them. So you can either do that in a product called Retain, so check above or in the description below for a link to that product, or you can use color catchers. Again, I'll have a link above or below and below, so you can see what that product is like, and you use both of those in the washing machine. So that's a personal choice. You may or may not be pre-washing your fabrics. But on to tip number 2, and that is pressing your fabric. And by pressing your fabric, I mean pressing and not ironing. And yes, there is a difference. So what I like to use, we often talk generically about starching our fabrics when we are pressing them or before we start pressing them. That's kind of a generic term for putting something on the fabric that makes it a little stiffer, which leads to better cuts actually. So what I like to use is Acorn Precision Piecing Products Easy Press Fabric Treatment. And I have a whole video on how to do that. So I'm going to put the link above and in the description below so you can watch that after this video to see exactly what I mean when I'm talking about pressing and not ironing, because you don't want to distort the fabric, and you can do that if you are ironing rather than pressing. This leads us to tip number 3. And that is to always straighten the edge of your fabric before you continue with your cutting. So straightening the edge of your fabric is making sure that you get nice, even cuts, and you don't get that dreaded V where your fabric gets cut and then it takes this little dip and continues along. Because you have to remember that the fabric, when it comes off the bolt, is not straight. So to learn how to straighten your fabric, check above and in the description below, because I'll have a link to a video on how to do that. Now we come to tip number 4. And that is getting accurate cuts. Every step along the way contributes to a successful quilt, and cutting is one of the most important ones. So after you've done everything else, steps 1 to 3, you need to get accurate cuts. So how do you do that? Well, I like to use Martelli Notions rulers. And the reason I like to use them, and they have a whole bunch of different ones, but the reason I like to use them is due to the non-slip material that's on the back of all of their templates and rulers. And what that does is it keeps it right down on your fabric, and as I'm cutting and going along, this ruler does not budge. It doesn't move. Like, I have to really press down to do that, and that isn't even on fabric, right? So when it gets on the fabric, it just stays there, and it gives you these very accurate cuts. Now, maybe you don't have Martelli rulers, and by the way, if you're interested in some of my favorites, make sure you check above and in the description below. But if you don't have Martelli rulers and you have acrylic rulers, you can get a product called InvisiGrip, and that's by Omnigrid. Again, I'll put links above and in the description so you can see it, and it's sort of like a clear acrylic film that fits on the bottom of your rulers. It's not acrylic, vinyl, sorry, vinyl that fits on your acrylic rulers. And that helps prevent that ruler wibble wobble that can go on and give you distorted cuts. Now we are at tip number 5. And tip number 5 is to press your seams as you go along. There are some people who don't think that it's important to do this as you go along, but they're wrong. It's a very important step. So for example, when I have taken 2 pieces here, I have 2 charm squares here, and I have sewn them together. Before I put the next piece on, I'm going to make sure that I open this up. I am going to make sure that I press it nice and flat before I add the next piece to it. And why do we want to do this? Because it makes for a flatter quilt top, it makes for easier quilting, and if you're someone who pays for quilting by check, your long armor is really going to appreciate this step. Now, at the beginning of the video, I told you that I had a bonus tip to share with you. But before I do that, I just want to bring your attention to the icon you'll see below this video. And that is a heart with the $ in it. That is a super thanks, and that is your opportunity to support the Chatterbox Quilts channel. So as little as $2, you can support the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel, and that helps me to buy the various notions that I use to provide these free videos for you. So if you would care to do that, I would truly appreciate it. Just click on that icon and choose the amount you want to donate. Let's get into that bonus tip, shall we? So we are at the stage where we are pressing nicely, everything is accurately cut, everything's looking great. And now in a lot of quilts, especially if they're pieced quilts, you're going to have rows that you have to join together. And typically what you do is in the one row, you press all your seams in one direction, and the second one, you press them in the opposite direction. You continue this on so that you can nest your seams together. So here I have 2 rows of charm squares again. And when I get to this stage where I've got my rows done and everything's nice and pressed, you can see that they're going in different directions here, I need to put them together. And how do I do that? Well, a lot of people like to use pins. I'll pin on one side of the seam and on the other. But even with pins, it can be hard to get those seams exactly where you want them, because as you stitch along, you will often, the pin, as you go to pull it out, will pull the fabric over a little bit, and it doesn't give you that accurate, nice nesting seams that you want to see. So my trick is to use seam align glue. Again, this is a product from Acorn Precision Piecing, and it is what you will use to put these together. You can see I've already got it on here. Again, I have a video that gives you step-by-step instructions on how to use this product, which, although they call a glue, is really not a glue in the sense we typically think, is a temporary adhesive that holds our rows together. And I can put them exactly where I want them. Use the seam align glue, you just put a couple dots on. I'd fold this back, press it to activate it, and I can get these exactly where I want them. This one, it happens to be off a little bit. I don't like it. I can easily remove this and use the product again and stick it where I want. So once I put this on here, you can see this is not going to move. I can just stitch along, and I know that seam is going to be precisely joined up with the next row's seam. So my tip is, get some Acorn Precision Piecing seam align glue, because I tell you, it's a game changer. Again, check above and below for links to that product as well as a video on how to use it. Thanks for watching this video today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And for more helpful quilting information, please go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.